Welcome to a new year. I think I barely made anything last year at all, which is kind of crazy. As you can tell now, we have the coronavirus running around the planet, doing terrible things to all over the place. We've got a lot more time to mess around with things, and find myself messing around with PlayBASIC yet again. I haven't really stopped. There are points where I do take a break. Sometimes they're because I've got other things that are more pressing to do. You know how life is, man. And then other times you get washed out and get really burnt out and doing something such a long time. And this project's been going on in one form or another for 18 years, 17 years, something like that. That's pretty crazy. What I was looking at recently was going back and looking at some. So we're really talking about 165 and various states of progress on that. I posted a bug the other day, not really a bug, in a little stockpiling thread of bugs and ideas. This one's about checking if a point is in the box. Oh, yeah. It doesn't flip the terms, so it doesn't actually check. If you give it a box that's not in order, which sometimes is convenient, sometimes is not. If you have a lot of data to chew through, it's probably a bit more efficient for the command to do that internally, to flip the terms or do the comparisons back to front, than it is for you to do a flip yourself. I'll just check that example out, see what this actually is all about. I've forgotten now myself. Okay, so we're over that rectangle there, but the bottom one doesn't actually return a positive. If we look at the code, yeah, the Y ranges are, this one here must be the top. That's the bottom, the command expects it to be. It just assumes that rectangle you provided makes sense. You know, the x1 coordinate is this top corner here. Let's say this is the rectangle there. The x1 is this point over here, and x2 is this point over there. In this case here, it's more convenient for me to give them to it in that order. Otherwise, I'd have to do like a swap or something like that. You know, a swap. What is it? Y2, Y position with Y pos 2, which is okay. That would flip those two values constantly around, or I need to feed them into the command the right way. But sometimes, you know, doing an extra step yourself can be quite costly if you're doing lots of these things. In this case here, it makes no difference. I mean, who cares really? We're doing 2 comparisons per frame. In the real world, I'm talking about doing, you know, tens of thousands of comparisons per frame. That's where you'd see a big difference, or you'd see some difference anyway. Maybe on a newer system you wouldn't, but this is running my laptop at the moment. One thing I did notice with 165 that's a problem. Oh, here you go. There's another one there. Vector stack example. Let's have a look at that. I don't remember what this actually is now. Like most of these. No, just give me a new project, thanks. Nice blank project, yeah. Dump the code in, paste. Right. Okay, I remember this example. The actual code now I don't remember, but it's drawing like a sphere. Method particle slow. Alright. Hit space, I guess, to change. Unknown operation code. Looks like a valid instruction to me. Y equals some structure, some nested structure. What that probably means is that the piece of code that's been generated on the previous line is producing some junk. So sometimes the error is not actually what you're looking at. The error is something else. Actually there it's pulling out the y coordinate twice. It's pulling out the x coordinate. And just see if that will fix it. I don't think it will. No. It was wishful thinking. Right, as for what that does, I don't know. I have to go and track this down. I know this is very old. This is one of those ones where it's got a... You can do some vector operations on a structure, and you provide it these structures in this kind of funny format and give it some operations to add certain vectors together or multiply them or subtract or divide. It was one of those ones that was added. It was not officially added. It was kind of tacked in for testing, and the idea was that, well, we'll see if it actually is going to work and be beneficial, rather than make a big song and dance about adding a feature and then discovering it's not very good. I think from memory it ran okay. It doesn't at the moment in 1.65. Small problem. Like most things. Get rid of that. Back to here. What else we got here? It doesn't work. Something about Steve. Oh, okay, yeah, there's a problem with data commands. I remember running into that one myself. One I have run into a bunch of times now is I'll see if I can find an example that does it. I'll just load the other one. This graphing example. Plotting COVID cases of all things. There you go. Okay, the code for this particular example has a lot of array passing in it, and so we've got our global array we're using as kind of the heap. So this type here, we've got a bit of stuff stored in the type. It's all pretty straight away stuff. But what I noticed is that if I use a handle, sometimes it will give you effectively just at runtime you'll get like an error saying this is it doesn't exist. I think in here it was doing the same thing. I'll try it in here. Try and make it happen. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head if this is going to work or not. Something like this. So what we're doing here is we're screening that this particular structure within the array to see if it exists, which is kind of standard practice really, or best practice really, for PB coding anyway. And then if it does exist, in other words, if there's something there, then that structure exists. In other words, if this returns anything other than 0, it's a valid thing. We'll try running it and see if it dies at runtime. And it doesn't. My gut feeling is that yeah, there's something about the handles themselves when they're created. You might not remember, but the 1.65 uses a different method altogether, and the old method has to be converted to the new method. I know. It's like punching yourself in the face. Eventually you want to stop doing it. So there's this old approach that the compiler understands that we have to convert to this new approach for the new runtime to understand. And the new approach is a lot easier at runtime, which is great, but at some point, I think when these arrays are localized, like when an array is passed into something, maybe that was where the fault was. Adding something to the array. Pretty ugly there. Infections. That does all the same things. That seems to work too. So maybe one of those ones that's kind of... I was having this problem with this Pro when it was smaller. And since then I've added a bunch of stuff and ignored the fact that it was happening. I just didn't bother with this kind of stuff here at all. But yeah, I have been looking for that problem in the actual compiler. And for quite a while, this is one of the last remaining big issues that stops it from running some of the bigger programs, like, you know, PlayBASIC DLL. To get that running in the new runtime, would be a very big endorsement for the new runtime. If that works, we can pretty much say it works, you know, more than adequately. And we can convert the instruction set to the new instruction set. Again, another punch in the face moment, but you know, it it has to be done. At some time, you know, having that, even that process, you know, having this thing that can convert one to the other. If we go up here, look for PlayBASIC to DLL, PlayBASIC to DLL. There's a tutorial there about skimming through how to do that stuff. Beta releases, activation. We're giving this away now too, by the way. It only works with 1.64, so if you're using those versions there, you can build some pretty efficient applications. You just have to think in terms of modular rather than one giant block of program. Modular just means, you know, taking the bits that you need to work fast and efficient, separating them out of your code so they'll compile completely separately in one file preferably, and then passing that to this tool and it just spits out a DLL replacement. Then in your main project, you copy the DLL into the project folder, and then it will generate a piece of PB code you cut and paste into your project, and then with the list of functions that you're calling. And that's pretty much the process. Not saying it's, you know, the most attractive process in the world, but it does give you a way of converting your PB code to native without ever needing to know anything other than PB. The alternative is you'd have to learn C, and anything that you think that you're comfortable with here in PB doesn't exist. I'm not saying that, you know, C is difficult. It's not that difficult at all, really. But making them interface to each other, you can't just pass a string from a C function to a PB function. You'll learn the horrible reality of working with strings. Or just arrays or anything really in general. But what we need is a version that's built, a version of this tool that runs with 1.65, and that can eliminate the need for changes in the instruction set. I assume there probably would need to be some more, but it wouldn't need to be rewritten. That's the trouble. Every time this thing gets... if I add a new command set, that adds a whole bunch of work to everything. It's crazy. If you have this thing that can build DLLs from your everyday code, you could take some of the internal command sets in PB today and just build source level replacements, and then just convert those includes to DLLs and just pull them into your project when you need them. So it makes the runtime smaller, right? If you don't need it, like often some of those libraries would be quite functional through the interpreter, let alone as native. And you could choose when you want to do one and do the other, or you could use some of those functions inline them into your own code and then convert that whole slab into machine language. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. This is effectively a 5-year-old tool and no one's ever used it. That's kind of why I'm reluctant to put a lot of effort into these things, because it was just I don't want to say a waste of time, but to have people not understand what that does, it's pretty frustrating. And I harped on people, this is how it's going to work. Even if I had inlined that, like even if you could have went, had some code here, for example. What's these functions? This whole program is basically functions anyway. So if we could have just said, had some tag here, export as DLL or something, and give it a name, DLL name dot DLL. And you need an end statement there as well, the close, to have that sort of consistent start and end we have in PB. You wrap these tags around something. Even if we did this, in other words, what would happen is the compiler would be running through, see this in a pre-process, take this code, send it off to the secondary tool, produce the machine code every time you hit compile. And even if it only takes a couple of seconds, add that to the compile time. If you have lots of blocks in your program that do this, I know it's convenient to build everything all the time, but as things get larger, it's just a rat's nest of losing productivity in terms of just compile time. I mean, I'm one of those people that likes to build all the time, but I never build the whole project, or I very rarely will do it. If I can get away with it. So this is wrapped all around this block of code here. Say there's stuff down here. You need to make sure that everything that it used was provided to it. So let's say that would be the end of the block. If I run this now, of course nothing would happen, but what this would do is it would build that chunk of code, would grab the source code, that section between this marker, that's the end marker, and the start, and try and build that as a DLL. If there's something syntactically that didn't make sense, you'd just fail. Spectacular. But you could do this kind of stuff. You could, maybe even if this was just like an inline directive. Who knows? That I could probably get more in be more excited by something like that. Export as because this would be like a pre-processing function, like the include statement. So we're saying export, or even it could be even just export code or something. Have some block or something like that. You need an end statement as well. So when it's end export code, same thing. It would literally be just cutting and pasting this code, passing it to a secondary tool. they have to be called in order. But you could have things like, you know, image processing or that kind of stuff to make things externally, or sprite cutting tools or those kind of things. But most of that, I still think, works best if you have a secondary tool that's separate from your compile code. Yeah, it's like scene creators and animation creators, that they're all good ideas. But if your scene creator produces a block of code you paste into your project, well, how do you do that at build time? How do you say, well, okay, I'll get my friend to make scenes for my game or levels for my game, but he can't do that without the IDE. It's kind of crazy. I mean, you'd find some way of making that work, but you know what I'm trying to say. Alright. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is get the development PC set up again, because it's actually not set up at the moment, and try and get those couple of main faults in 1.65 fixed. I'm not even sure when the last update was actually produced. I think it was, well, it was the end of 2018. That would be probably the longest period without an update in PB history. That's 1.65B, yeah. So the C must be the current build beta. Not even sure what things were fixed in that version. There are little optimizations that have been implemented all the way through it. And that's why I like the new model better. Some of the older optimizations fit into it better. Some things didn't. To be honest, they didn't fit in as well as what I was hoping. But you know, that happens every time you change something. You know, it's like once you've written a program that's longer than 100 lines, you start to run into situations where it's, oh geez, maybe I should have done it that way or this way or some other way. Right, so there you go. So 1.65C2 hasn't been fully released. That's something we can do in the short term at least. So we can get that build out there, and that's be the current supported build. While I'm looking for that last couple of bugs. I knew I should have posted that code to the board, but I noticed it was faulty. The array passing one I'm talking about, actually. Oh, I thought I'd remember what that was. Yeah, that's a massive length of time. So we're talking about pretty much, what are we here? 18th December the 17th. That was when Beta 12 was built and put up on the forum, and so we've got 16 months without a release build. That's crazy, man. Crazy. Anyway, just thought I'd tap in and say hello, and that's Steve's demo. I must actually build a version of that in PB to DLL.
Hi, welcome to another PlayBASIC.
I must do that as a curiosity for myself. I'm pretty sure you could get some nice frame rates out of it, and the fact that that's written in itself is just one of those those smug moments. Even though the code is not the machine code it produces is not fantastic, it certainly has some scope in there for it to be improved. You can do some interesting things. Alright dudes, thanks for stopping by, thanks for hanging out, doing some PB things, listen to me waffle on occasionally. And I hope you're all doing well, and I hope things don't get too crazy with this corona. I've got a bad feeling they might for some countries, and I know that we're sort of tapering off now at the moment, but it doesn't mean much given that the lack of a vaccine or the lack of an easy treatment for it. We'll see how we go. Thanks again. See you next time, and have fun. Enjoy yourself. Bye.